Welcome to the Leadership by Design podcast, where thoughtful leaders share lessons from their journey. I'm David Adams, founder of the Business Freedom Group, and today we have Peter Fishburne from Brown and Bigelow. So welcome, Peter, and I'd love to start off with you telling our audience a little bit about yourself, your company, what you do, but also how you got to where you are.
All right. Well, welcome. And Dave, thank you for the opportunity to kind of chat with you. I kind of have looked forward to this a little bit, it helps me to do introspective on myself, but also get me thinking about certain things. I'm not sure how far back. I know the theme here is on leadership, and leadership can take a lot of different forms. I can recall through my many years. Let's just talk about first. My first career was going to be in the area of recreation and leisure services, and with an emphasis in commercial. But when I was going to college, I was president of my student organization on my campus, Santa Monica College, and then I moved on to California State University at Northridge, and lo and behold, I became president of the California State Parks and Recreation Society, which had over 1,000 students. And when you talk about leadership at 20 or 22, you're not sure what you're getting yourself into, but certainly was a very interesting time period for me to develop. Very briefly, because the Parks and Recreation Society just very recently allowed the students to vote as members, not just associates, but as voting members. So we can, having 1,000 members, we could determine who's going to be president of the organization if we all decided to vote one way. We didn't. But again, we also, though, got very involved with the organization, and we decided that we weren't sure we were happy with the direction the organization was taking, the society. So we did a series of workshops over the whole state on different topics. And so I went to all of them, being president, and it was very interesting because you get to listen to a lot of people. I think that's one of the things that might be a theme through what I'm talking about. I guess from there is I didn't have the expertise in all these topics we were talking about, and we put together what we call a paper. We put together a final paper which we turned in, called the Badass Rock Paper. It's because that's where our last meeting was at. So we were in a camp, and the society accepted them and said they put them under study and accepted a lot of our recommendations. But those would not have happened if we all hadn't, as students, listened to each other as to what was important, what did we care about. And then from there, I went overseas to Saudi Arabia. And again, I was in a very foreign area, and I was working with Koreans who are my partners in putting on the recreation for the camp. And again, it was a matter of I had to listen to them because I didn't know what the Koreans wanted to do. I just couldn't walk in and say, hey, we're going to do. No, that wouldn't have worked. You had to listen for the programs. And that's one of the things I picked up from my education background back then, was listen, because you're supposed to provide a service to someone, and you had to know what it was. You just couldn't walk in, because if you were telling people what to do, they weren't going to do it, and they wouldn't. And if you're putting on a program, regardless of what it was, baseball or arts program or whatever it may be, if you didn't have their input, the program wouldn't be successful. So from there, I went over to, and my emphasis was in commercial recreation, so I got involved in the travel industry and worked for a company called Simplex Tours and a company called Pleasant Hawaiian Holidays. And for Pleasant Hawaiian Holidays, I was their customer relations person. I had to respond to all the concerns that the consumers had. And again, that was coming back to, well, I got to listen to what they're saying, because no one wants a superficial letter. And that was something I always used to push back at with the owners of the company. They said, oh, just do a form letter. And I'd be saying, well, if they ask certain things and you don't address it, they're going to think you just blew them off, which we weren't trying to do, but we didn't want to spend a lot of time composing letters, but we wanted to address the concerns. And So that's something that I did there. And then from there, I
Well,
got more involved.
before you go to the next thing, I would just love to call out a couple of points that I think you
Sure.
communicated, and you communicated well. So, um, leadership has probably more listening than speaking in it, and many people sort of get lost in that, right? They're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to lead," as opposed to "I'm supposed to listen." And I think leadership through listening is a great theme. And also, you picked up something where you were saying, we were supposed to provide them a service, and that kind of sparked my thought of leadership as a service. So when you're being a leader, who are you serving? you know so let me turn it back over to you, just kind of crystallizing those 2 points, and now talk about how you, because you've been a sales professional for a long time. So how did you take those early experiences and then bring them into your sales career?
Well, I just want to bring up one other point. I did work for the Nevada Department of Education for 20 years,
Oh.
and I was never, my goal there was just to exist, collect the money,
Hmm.
because I worked there part-time. But what I found in that area so much, and even in with the service side, is that if you're going to bring, if you had to have goals for yourself, but you had to listen and be able to convey those goals and objectives to the other people in your team, whoever you were working with, so that they would buy into it and, oh, okay, now I understand what you're doing, instead of coming in and saying, we're going this way. And if you didn't give an opportunity to explain why or let them respond to that, then they weren't going to come with you. And then the other thing is about listening is, I found that all these people that I've worked with over the years, they're pretty smart people, and they can add and change things that, oh, you never thought of that. I didn't think of that. Yeah, we should incorporate that. So that's another reason why the listening is so important, because there's no way you could always have all the answers, but you also want to bring people along with you and feel that they're part of the effort to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
there.
that's great.
And so I moved into sales because it was kind of, well, even in the travel industry, I was doing sales because I was um, creating some of the programs for the people and communicating what the tours and things we're doing and why people should join our tour program. Um, but I also found that no, I lost my train of thought on that one. But I feel that people have to come along with you. And so when I moved into sales, and that was really kind of by accident, because I was not working at the time and I was looking for a marketing position. And someone said, well, why don't you just do this? And since it's straight commission, if you make a few bucks, cool. And 30 years later, I'm still doing it. And what it was um, listening to, in the sales side, yes, you have a particular product and service, and I have an MBA in marketing as well. So I understand business overall in general, what they're trying to accomplish, that you have to sit down and listen to the person. What is their objective, to why they're calling you and maybe wanting a promotional item, just so the people in the audience know. Brown and Bigelow is a promotional products industry. We're a distributor, where people come to us and say, we're going to have a trade show, we're going to a golf tournament, or we're going to say thank you. What are some ideas that we can do to meet those goals? And when you're in my role, and I want to distinguish myself from my competitors, is I want people to understand, hey, I understand what you're trying to do. Let's sit down and talk about it and see what your objectives are, and see if the promotional item that you're asking for, or whatever it is we are working on, meets those goals, or are there alternatives? And for me to be able to give them alternatives, I have to understand exactly what they want. And sometimes in my field, being in the promotional products industry, some people call it swag. Um, People don't always give that a lot of thought. And
Right.
so it's a matter of coming back to them and saying, here are some opportunities that you may not have thought of. And that's where the the listening is so critical, because many times in a good sales thing, you want them to come up with the idea and think they're the smartest person in the room, and you're just helping them. And if you're building that relationship, well, that's cool. That you don't want to be a know-it-all or I told you so kind of person.
Right. So when you're um, really leading your customer, right? Are you often doing that by asking questions more than you said you want it to be their idea? Are you asking those leading questions to help them get to where they might go? And
Yeah, I try to do that. Again, it really is interesting, because it depends upon how much they let me in to their planning. I feel that I'm a pretty creative person when you start talking about programs and how to involve people and how to bring things together. It's a matter of um, gaining their confidence to bring you in to discuss it. I mean, to me, if there's an ideal client, they're doing a convention, let's say, a sales meeting for all their people, they're bringing people in.
right.
So your question is to them, well, when everybody goes home, what do you want them to know? How do you want them to feel? Do you want them to really have a positive experience, a positive feeling about the company, a positive feeling about where the company is going and the direction? And and those are all things that are very important. And then the question can be, well, how do you plan to accomplish some of that? And I can then come in and make some suggestions from how the promotional item can divide people into teams. You can have the materials they need to do some of those things, such as journals, or maybe it's oh, well, you need awards. Well, can we do something fun with the awards instead of having something normal,
All right.
average? You want people to really feel that they being recognized properly. And so yes, a lot of this also comes down to budget. But if you are allowed to come involved at an earlier time, they can now see, oh, yeah, we can budget for that. Now I see where you're coming from. Um, and I don't want to take the time here, but there's just so many things that we can add to
Sure.
a convention, a sales meeting, or any other event, golf tournament, or thank you gift, or whatever it may be. HR and onboarding people. Let's sit down and think: what is the feeling you want, and what do you want people to remember?
Well, that's a great leadership question. What is the feeling you want? What is the culture and tone you want to set? And let me switch you out of your professional background. I know that you have a heart for community service. You serve in a variety of ways, and I believe you're currently your Rotary chapter president. Um, so how does your thoughts about leading that community come in? Or some of the same concepts of you know at, leading by listening, etc.
Yes. I was president last year, not the current year. I was just president,
Okay.
and that's an interesting question. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed being a Rotarian is this: Rotary spends a ton of money on training, and at different places all the way through your career as a Rotarian, especially if you want to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I became president-elect, I began doing a lot of thinking, and I began doing a lot of reading and talking to other Rotarians and people who had been president before, as well as going to the president-elect 3-day training session that Rotary has. And again, it comes back to listening, but it was listening to where the Rotary Club was at that point in time. What were some of the goals of Rotary International? And what are some things that Peter would want to accomplish during that year? And all of those things, to make them work, you have to go talk to your fellow Rotarians to see if they're on those same wavelength. And if they are, then you have a much easier road to hoe. And so what I tried to do during my year as president was to try to bring them all closer together. Now, one of the things I did to do that was I wanted everybody to think about Rotary all the time. And so I gave every Rotarian a pair of Rotary socks, so they would wear them. And then I used the socks as a tool to that anytime we had a speaker or a student of the week or someone, they got a pair of socks. And I got input from the audience of the Rotarians giving me some some teasing, but they all really liked the idea that Rotary was being spread out. And by doing that, and then I also had activities during our meetings that I would talk about Rotary or goals of Rotary that related to what we wanted to do as our own club to try to encourage them to come along. And so we would do projects and things. And if you're going to do a project, you had to bring them in. So one of the things I did was I noticed that in our membership that we had about 20 new members that had been in our Rotary Club for less than 2 years. And they weren't all as active as they should have been. So what I did is I said, okay, you guys are new Rotarians. One of the ways to learn how Rotary works is to take on a project. So I said to them, here's $5,000 out of my budget. You can spend it any way you want. You don't have to come to me and ask me for permission or anything. I just want to know what your project is and are you going to move forward with it? And lo and behold, they all got together, made a decision. And yes, there's always people, as any committee, 4 or 5 people do more of the work than the other 20, but all 20 took pride in what we did. And I think it helped them understand our club, and I think they had a lot of fun doing it, which is the goal as well. You can't install too many new things. You can't radically change the club all of a sudden. You got to make some incremental changes, and maybe the next president will keep on some of the things or change them to make it even better.
Well, I love the leadership lesson of trust, right? That you wanted to get them involved and you wanted to get them excited. So you didn't micromanage. You said, guys, here's a bunch of money, make something interesting happen. And obviously you can't do that with your whole budget, but you could afford to do it with a portion of your budget. And that's a very empowering thing to get people motivated, moving. I like that. I like that a lot.
The project also flowed into the goals of Rotary. It had to be a community involvement. It had to benefit the community somehow. So that's why they're that's why they're Rotarians, is to make an impact in the community. So my goal was to get them involved so they would feel as if they were being part of the community and part of Rotary, and not just sitting in the periphery.
Right. But I think that lesson goes far beyond Rotary and community service. That's true for in a company. You want some people to get going and move some stuff, and that's great. Now, you talked about your early experiences with student leadership and then what that led to. What along your journey, what other influences have you had on your leadership style? Has there been a particular public figure that you listen to and follow and admire, or what formative experiences have you had along the way after that student experience?
Well, I don't know if I have anyone particularly like that. I know that I had a mentor when I was in college. Her name was Jo Kidd, and she took me under her wing, and we did that shebang. And then when I was at CSUN, we had another professional who was helping me with the society, because I didn't know all the ins and outs, and that was helpful by him keeping an even keel on all of us. I don't know if I had anyone who really was specific. I think it was more just the hard knocks and listening to people. I know that I think I reacted to a lot of things. Like with the state of Nevada, it was frustrating because I wanted certain changes to take place in my area of grants work. And it seemed like I was always banging my head against the people above me in that and trying. And so it was a matter of trying to communicate. I may have made some small changes, but I wanted some legislative changes to take place, and that was very difficult to happen because, and I understand it, there are other priorities. Mine was a small priority in the whole running of the state or the governor's office, and they did pay attention. They just did not feel that it was a big enough thing to move forward on. And so I learned how to take rejection and not let it, keep me down. But the whole time I was there, every time I had an opportunity, I would bring up the one or two things that I thought were important. And I even got onto some change committees that were going on at the department. And so I would specifically in the area of grants, because that's what I was doing while I was there. And a lot of people listened to saying, yep, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Peter. Whether or not we can change that or not, but I certainly hear the frustration and the challenge that you're under, because even the people who were above me didn't always have the authority to.
Well, it's interesting, I hear
In
a
statute,
couple of themes
you
there,
take a lot to change.
yeah, but you talked about rejection or the inability to make change, yet it sounds like through the committees and other things you stayed the Energizer Bunny. You somehow managed to keep motivated even with the obstacles.
Well, again, it comes down to the ultimate goal that I felt was very important, because here we are at the state level. Are we maximizing our dollars for the students in that classroom or that program down below? And sometimes other people can't see it. And not that I saw them all, but I worked closely with other people and some of the grants people in the school district and the people, and they had a lot of good programs. And it was my job to try to find ways to implement those, because that was their goal.
Right.
And I didn't want to be the one in the way of saying no. I wanted to, well, let's rethink this. Is there another way we can call it? Is there another way we can fund it? How can we do that so that you can still move forward with your programs? And at the same time, be in the guidelines of all the federal money guidelines and all those kind of things. We didn't want anybody to get in trouble for spending the money incorrectly.
Sure. So, do you have any examples of when you've taken a risk in some environment and it didn't work out and what you learned from it?
Well, yeah. Well, I was again, as I said at the beginning, I was in recreation, and when I went overseas, I worked for a company called the Nail Corporation, and their job was to manage and train and modernize the Saudi Arabian National Guard, which is the guard that protects the king, not the regular army, protects the king. That's their job. And there are many times where I would get very, very frustrated with these people because I'm a recreation person, and I just, hey, the men want to do this. By God, we're going to find a way to do it, because my job is to have the morale high. My job was not to say no to things that they would want to do. So there was one experience where I got into a lot of trouble because we wanted to go camping from Riyadh to Dhahran. And so we got a bus ready. And then that morning at 3 a.m. when we were leaving, we needed 2 buses. So we just took one without asking permission. And we drove down to Dhahran. And the bad thing was that the bus we took broke down on the way back. So they were not very happy with us on that. And I did get into a lot of trouble over that. But the goal was for these people. They had a week off or whatever, and we wanted to go down to the beach and see a different part of the country. It's a matter of working with the people to try and bring them along.
So what do you think that experience taught you?
Well,
was it worth the risk? Would you do it differently next time? What did you learn?
I learned that in that time again, there's a couple of things there. You have to understand the environment that you're in. And I was fairly new in that position at the time, maybe only 6 months in. And so learning to ask all the permissions and all that and get everybody on board, I would have done a better job at. And hopefully before that day, maybe we would have asked for 3 buses and only taken 2. So something like that to at least have the things that afterwards we experienced. But that was the only thing that they were really upset with was the fact that we took a bus and it broke down. But I had other experiences out there where I had to go through the hierarchy to get things done. and also to also abide by, like, an internal auditor was always looking over my shoulder and making sure that we were spending the money allocated by the company in the proper way, and keeping it keeping track of it all. Some of those things I probably would do the same way. Hey, just deal with it, company. I mean, your rules and your regulations worrying about $10 is ridiculous
Mhm.
when we're spending millions. That doesn't make any sense at all. You guys should get your act together.
Right.
Um, but again, I don't want to buck the system. I don't think that benefits me as a person. I think it's very important that you should work with the people who are above you, keep them appraised of what you're thinking and what you're doing. Um, and that's very, very important. And again, remember now, I was pretty young back then, and I was one of those go-getters who said, "We're going to do this." I mean, I did a lot of different things. I had to work with the Saudis. I had to work with the King Faisal Hospital to work with things so we could have interaction with them. I had to work with different organizations in the city that was outside the bounds of the hierarchy. So it was just a matter of always trying to communicate what I was trying to do to make sure that they were on board with what I was trying to do.
Well, it sounds like a really interesting mix of yourself and a Korean company and and Saudi customers.
It is. It was an American company, but we had U.S. military people there, but the support team were the Koreans and Jordanians and that sort of thing, um, who did a lot of that kind of work.
Right. Did you find, despite all the differences, did you find certain commonality that it didn't matter what the language and the nationality was? I mean, what traits of people do you think you found in common?
Well, I've always been an open person, so I found it very interesting to work with the Koreans, because my lack of a better term, my chief of staff was the head Korean in the camp.
Hmm.
And so that was very fortunate for me because I could get things done that many other people couldn't, because I'd go to him and say, "Hey, Mr. Pak, we need rather together to get this off." And I said, "By the way, we can do this to help get the Koreans more involved in this activity." So it was very advantageous. And also, I learned that a lot because right now, yes, I'm a Rotarian, but I'm very, very much involved with the Rotary Youth Exchange, which is working with students in foreign countries who come here
Right.
and learn what they're doing and trying to communicate. And again, it's listening to what they want to do and also educating them. Yeah, you can do that, but that's not really a good idea.
Well, it's been great to speak with you. Let's wrap up. I think I have an idea of what your answer might be, but let's wrap up with, for a business leader who's growing, or one of these young international people who comes over and wants to grow their leadership, what would you say is an actionable step they could take this week just to develop themselves as a more thoughtful leader?
Well, one of the things I say to all the students who I work with is a couple of things. Don't be afraid. Ask questions. If you don't know something, ask questions. If someone says to you, "Would you like to do this?" your first answer should be yes, and then worry about the consequences later, because your job over here is to be, and the same thing for the students we send overseas, the US students overseas, is you're ambassadors. So people want to know about you. You want to know about us to get as involved as you possibly can. Um, get involved in any activity that you can. If you like sports, join a team. I had a student from the Czech Republic who'd never played football before, and he was on the football team. I have another student that this year never played tennis before. He was on the tennis team. So it's a matter of getting involved. They made immediate friends. They made immediate connections, and that's what they're trying to do when they're here, is to make those connections. And also remember, at least with the students who are coming over here, the people they're relating with are their same age, and they've got the same questions that you have, and you should be communicating with them. And my job or role would be just to encourage them, and if they're going a little bit in the wrong direction, to say, whoa, you should not go to that event. That's a political event. No,
Right.
that's not your role. Your role is just here to learn and just talk with people one-on-one and learn about people.
Well,
Does that answer your?
you brought up some great themes. I love the get involved, look for ways to say yes. You talked about listening. Those are all great um, themes for leaders of any age, right? So, thank you again, Peter. It was a real pleasure to chat with you today. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Leadership by Design and keeping your thinking fresh by listening to thoughtful leaders like Peter. And we'll see you next time.